Good morning, everybody, and welcome again to International Women's Day here at DAN. It's a great pleasure to be here. Been a fabulous morning so far, and welcome to everybody who's live streaming across the world. I am Pippa Glucklich, CEO of Amplifi UK. I joined the group last May, so I'm fairly newbie, but I'm absolutely delighted to be here this morning talking about how to drive balanced leadership and diversity within the workplace. More of that in a moment. We all know how absolutely important this is, and we've been hearing a bit this morning about not just the cultural benefits, but also the real business benefits that better diversity and balanced leadership will bring to all of the businesses. So, and I think for businesses like ours that are really focused on customers and people, representing the people that we're trying to connect our brands to, is really, really important. Sorry, I hope there's people coming in, so I hope the camera can see. Don't worry, come on in. So it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I'm delighted that it's so high on the agenda here at Dentsu Aegis Network. We are extremely fortunate to have with us this morning Tamara Kaye, about her in a moment, who is head of Women in Leadership at Sky. And she is going to talk to us this morning about their journey in driving better balance within their organisation. And she's going to share some advice on what they've done, perhaps what not to do as well, and the change that they're seeing. We'll all know Sky is a hugely influential business. It operates pay TV in UK, Ireland, Germany, Austria, Italy, employs 30,000 people, takes 11 billion in revenue, and last autumn Comcast bought it in a mega deal for 30 billion pounds. So I think we've got a lot to learn from what Sky are doing, and Tamara and I don't actually know each other. I saw the CEO of Sky talk about the stuff that they're doing about a few weeks ago at a Women in Business event organised by Management Today, and I was so inspired I went and spoke to him, and he put me in touch with Tamara, so here we are. So thank you again. One of the reasons that I'm here, as well as my day job as CEO of Amplifi UK, I am also president of WACL, which is a women's club, stands for Women in Advertising and Communications London. For those of you that were tuning in for the Nicola Mendelsohn talk earlier, she referenced it because she's a former president as well. The club's been going 96 years, believe it or not. It was set up in 1923. And we represent 180 senior leaders in the industry, in our marketing and comms industry. And our purpose is to drive and accelerate gender equality in our sector. And it's something I'm really, really passionate about, and we do a lot of work in as part of WACL. So just a bit of context before we start chatting with Tamara. Last year within WACL, one of the things, being a good media person, I wanted was some data. So I wanted to really substantiate what the gap was in our sector. So we work in a really progressive, creative industry, and you'd think it would be pretty good. And the good news is it is better than a lot of other sectors, such as retail, finance, and so on. So we wanted to get a benchmark, and it won't surprise you that women don't have equal leadership status, even in a sector like ours. What we found was, and I've got a thing about it somewhere, which I think I've put on the floor, and Sky were actually brilliant, and they contributed. We put a case study in there about their Women Returners programme. But whilst women represent 50% of positions overall, and particularly at entry level, they come in at 50%, in fact slightly more than 50%, actually, they only represent 36% of leadership positions. So not bad comparatively, but still quite a lot of work to do. So over to Tamara, who's then going to run a short video for us. Excuse me, a little bit about Tamara. I'm sure she can introduce herself, but I'm going to do it for her. What's really important about Tamara is she's been in Sky in a business role, in program management, in content planning and marketing as well. So she's not traditionally, as I think is often the case, somebody from an HR or a people background. And I'm really looking forward to hearing a bit more about that, actually. Before that, she worked in TV production at Universal, BBC, Disney, and some smaller independent companies. She's produced lots of documentaries for Discovery, Channel 4, and BBC, amongst others. In her current role, she drives Sky's diversity and inclusion agenda, with her focus being on promoting best practices to achieve gender balance in Sky, delivering on a flexible and family-friendly culture. So she's going to talk to us a lot about the success that they've had. She works really closely with the Women at Sky Employment Network and bringing everyone on the journey, and women in tech and women in home service, which, as you can imagine, is a big challenge for a business like Sky, which in historically male-dominated STEM areas. So on behalf of Dentsu Aegis, thank you and welcome, Tamara. Delighted to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to have the opportunity at the end for a few questions, so please start thinking of some cracking questions. We're just going to run a VT just to show some of the work that Sky have been doing.
Imagine yourself not having any connection with Sky at all. Let's be honest, what would you think of Sky?
Oh, I imagine most people would think it is this massive, big business organisation.
A big corporate entity.
A huge beast. Formal.
Everybody would be wearing suits.
Impersonal.
Just a number.
Thousands of people.
In the past, have said I would never go to Sky. You know, it's such a big machine, I just get lost in it. But I couldn't have been more wrong. I never feel held back because
I'm a woman at Sky.
Because I'm brown.
Because I'm gay.
I'm an involved dad at home.
Because I'm visually impaired.
Because I'm disabled.
One thing I genuinely believe in is a world of merit, where people get recognised, encouraged, given opportunities. The idea that somehow nobody would be given those opportunities based on their colour or their gender or their ethnicity or anything else just seems kind of weird to me.
Inclusion to me is not standing out for the disability that I have, but instead just being able to take part fully in everything that goes on at Sky, to do my job to my best ability.
we spend a good majority of our time at work. If you don't feel like you belong or you don't feel like you're in part of something important, then it's just not a sustainable kind of career process.
I never hold back at work. I can just be myself here. I belong here.
My creativity and my opinions are really valued, and it's just the way Sky works. It's always open to different opinions from different perspectives.
That's how you innovate as a business.
It's good for business, and the other reason is it's just the right thing to do.
There's responsibilities on all of us to do something about it and to start thinking differently.
The key piece of advice I would give to someone to make one change would be to be aware.
Just understanding your colleague, your workmate.
Make a more harmonious environment in the workplace.
Let's not focus on what they can't do. Let's focus on what they can.
Any one person can make a difference. And if we can get all of us making a difference, we will create something very important.
So I think there's a lot of hope for a creative company like Sky that we can really be as inclusive as possible.
That's great, thank you. What a great video, very inspiring. So just before we get stuck in, I'd like to give a little bit of context to the sort of challenges that Sky may have faced and that actually we're facing in the world, and then a couple on the UK. So just a bit of a context, really. So we've heard this morning that intuitively we all know diversity matters. I don't think anyone can argue about that. And as I said earlier, it makes complete sense in business terms as well. So the global study from McKinsey last year called Diversity Matters found that the companies in the top quartile for gender, racial and ethnic diversity are more likely to have financial returns well above their industry average, about 35%. And given that today is International Women's Day, for those at the top quartile for gender diversity, they are 15% more likely to deliver better financial returns. And in the UK, they also found that greater gender diversity delivered a 10% increase. For every 10% increase in gender diversity, EBITDA rose by 3.5%. So pretty compelling. So the evidence is clear, but the bad news, some depressing stats for you now. We're seeing some progress, but despite the number of women on boards rising, so in leadership positions, only 1 in 4 FTSE 350 firms have 1 woman on their board, and there are still 5 all-male boards, which I find quite astonishing. On FTSE 100 boards, the percentage of women in leadership is really flatlined for the last 4 years. It's at just under 10%. And this is the worst one. Gender equality has stalled, according to the World Economic Forum. And globally, women are paid 63% of what men get. And at this rate, the global pay gap will take 202 years to close. That it just Oh, makes me feel ill. So we know all the facts and figures. There's no reason for us not to do it. So now you've all been waiting for Tamara. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, the first question I'd like to talk about is identifying the barriers. So Sky has invested in becoming a diversity employer and really focused on that. What drove it? How did it come about?
So the Women in Leadership programme came about a number of years ago, around 2014, through a conversation that a couple of people were having when a senior woman was leaving the business. And they went to Chris and said, this person's leaving the business. How have we lost her? Like, why have we let her go? And they looked up and they said, there are 30% women in leadership positions in this company. And we live and represent customers in a 50-50 world. This just can't be the right thing to do. They formed a working group, they put a business case together, they got buy-in from the top, and Women in Leadership was born as a business area working into Chris Stiliano, who became the exec sponsor. So a real sort of recognition from inside the business, from women in the business, that something needed to change, and then buy-in from the business based on actually a really simple business case that we're not being representative of our customer base or the world we're living in if we don't deliver this internally.
And I think what's interesting about that is Chris is the gentleman that I saw speaking about it, and he's the COO of a massive organisation, and he talked a lot about his personal experience of his awareness of how that came about and how he's really driven it from the very top of the business.
Definitely. And, I'm pleased and proud to say that the same is true of Stephen Van Ruin, our CEO, Debbie Klein, who is now our Group CMO and People Officer, as well as heading up corporate affairs. This is a massive, massive piece for her. She's spoken at our International Women's Day internally this week about her. And I just think if we can harness that power of the three of them now, we'll just be able to massively drive things forward and meet our target, which is a 50-50 leadership team, which is the right thing to do.
And it's 50-50 by...
So we haven't set a date. We're looking at those numbers. At the moment, we're just below 40%. So we started at 30%, and that was about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. We had a phenomenal drive initially. I think when these things start, everybody gets on board and everybody goes, yes, great. There's been business needs for restructures, etc. So we've had the opportunity to look at teams, to get the message across, to start getting people to understand the value, being completely open. We've plateaued the last couple of years, and that happens. That does happen with these things. So really, it's kind of, what can we do next? We've got to get the momentum. We've got to kind of keep that momentum. And it's on all of us as hiring managers, as women, as people, to pay it forward and make sure that we're continuing to identify and bring through a diverse talent pipeline from the bottom up.
And can I ask, how did you personally, what's your journey to taking on this role? Because it's quite different from what you were doing before.
It is. So a lot of the roles I've had, sort of programme management roles since I've been at Sky, the projects I've worked on have all been about delivering change, delivering business change. I was lucky enough to work on the project where we identified our corporate purpose and our values and the massive rollout piece we did around that. So I knew the person that was already in role. I didn't know Chris, but I applied and I was interviewed. But my motivation was I love driving change. I love working with people. I love driving change, and I saw this as there's a challenge, there's a vision. How can I get the people around Sky, harness all the energy and the power of those people, and really drive that change through? So, for me, it was a no-brainer that I would go for this role.
And when did you start it? How long ago?
I started in July.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So quite new.
Quite new.
Brilliant. So I want to talk a little bit about some specific initiatives and programmes that you've driven.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting. We all know there's been so much noise around this, particularly kind of post all the Me Too campaign and so on that's kicked off in the last couple of years. And one of the things that we do at WACL is we run a programme called the Future Leaders Award. And we've had some Dentsu winners of it, which is brilliant. And one of at all the interviews, because it's quite a hefty thing you have to go through in order to get the award. One of the applicants said, and I just thought it was really relevant today, was 2018 was the year of women finding their voice, and 2019 is the year of pragmatic action. And I think that some of the things that we're seeing at Dentsu, some of the programmes we're doing here, Her Voice and the Female Foundry and some other things that are more to come, are brilliant initiatives and real tangible evidence of what we can do. So I'd really love to hear what specific action that Sky has taken to empower women. And How, and also particularly, how have you done it without alienating men? I mean, we've heard earlier, particularly from Nicola, is, you know, everyone's got to be in this together. And one thing, when we were chatting last week, we have a network here called the One Network, and it's very specifically around driving diversity. And it's one, we all come together as one. It's not men only or women only, it's all together. So I'm really interested to hear a bit about that.
So Women in Leadership came about to address a specific need. And that need has evolved. So we were taking pragmatic action a number of years ago. We ran a barriers to progression survey with our leadership population. So it's about 600 to 900 people, specific to the women, to say what are your barriers? And out of that came our very first sponsorship and development program. So what we knew they wanted was to address certain needs that they have, whether, you know, not every woman, but some women do suffer from confidence issues. They won't go for jobs, or they won't speak up in a room, or often if you're the only woman in a room, it can be quite hard to find your voice. It can be quite intimidating. So we ran some workshops and quite importantly provided them with sponsors. So we did that, and then our first wave of senior females, they paid it forward and they nominated more people, and we had about 300 people go through that program. What I have been able to focus on over the last nearly year that I've been in role are two things. The missing middle. So it's all very well addressing at the top, and we do phenomenal stuff with apprentices and grads coming in, but actually there's a sort of missing middle at senior manager and what we call controller level, so just before a head of position, where we're losing women. And in our tech area, there's a high attrition rate because they look up and they go, well, I'm blocked. There's no positions there. They might be going off to have babies, or they might want to go travelling or take a sabbatical, or, you know, you've been working 15 years, you're just a bit knackered, you want to put your feet up. But actually, how do we allow them to have a fulfilling career and know that they've been identified as talent? So we set up our Women into Leadership programme, 2-year programme with an apprenticeship and an ILM, which is a foundation degree equivalent degree, with a mentor, with a sponsor, with workshops, with they do their colours insights. I don't know if any of you know that. They do workshops around their value, identifying their strengths. So we try and stay away from that, oh, you've got a confidence problem, we're going to address that with this workshop. But we say, you know, what are your strengths? What's the value that you bring? And then we push them to dig deeper and to really find that. And even in the time that the program's been running, we've seen massive benefits for everybody. Line managers are telling us that their people are operating differently and bringing their different, better selves to work. They're applying for jobs they otherwise wouldn't have gone for. They're going for promotions. There's been a few promotions. So all of that has been happening. The other program we ran was Women Returners. So specifically to bring women back into the business in senior positions, and that was really key, right? So you can have a gap on your CV, and we aimed for 2+ years. We worked with an organisation called Women Returners, who set the gold standard, and we worked with them. We sought out 5, we brought in 7. We brought 1 straight into a perm director role, into our group product and design area. We brought 2 into tech, and then into sports, Sky Media and finance, on a 6-month placement, and I'm delighted to say they're all staying with us, which for me is a fantastic success. As well, we changed the mindset for recruitment in tech and product in particular, because they each brought 2 people into those areas, where they thought, oh yeah, you can have a gap in your CV, and it doesn't mean you suddenly don't know how to lead or you've lost all the skills that you had. And I think what's really important when you're thinking about leadership skills, and it's something that we do on our Women into Leadership programme, if you're a good leader, you should be able to move around a business, right? You don't need to know the latest Java code, says I, who knows nothing about Java code. But you'll have people around you who know Java code, right? You need to lead. So you need to step up. You need to be a great leader. You need to be able to set a strategy, identify problems, roadmaps. Who are the great people to have around you? And that's where you have the opportunity to then bring in a really diverse team who can challenge each other's thinking, who can be really innovative, be really creative, and you've brought that in yourself. So that's the aim of our programs. That's our pragmatic action. And we're seeing the results of it in the business, which I think is phenomenal.
And okay, so those sound like fantastic initiatives and programs. What's the role of a sponsor? I'm interested to hear.
So,
what do you have to do if you're a sponsor?
Yeah, so there's a difference between a mentor and a sponsor. A mentor is somebody to talk to about your professional and personal development. And you can have a mentor who is at your level, who is a junior, who is more senior. And I think a lot of people get hung up sometimes on having like, oh, I must have a really senior mentor. If you want to have really regular contact and really great input, don't go for somebody really, really senior, because they've just got less time. It's just the way their diaries work. So we really encourage people to think, this is somebody who can really fulfill a need that you've told us. You've told us you get really nervous talking to senior stakeholders. Here's somebody at your level who does talk to really senior stakeholders. Why don't you talk to them and go and have a practice? Or our director of operations for Now TV said that one of the things that he really wants to learn about is social media and how to create a better brand for himself on social media. So his mentor for that is a 23-year-old apprentice in his team, because the 23-year-old apprentice knows everything there is to know about social media in a way that he, in his 55-year-old self, doesn't, right? And, I would do the same. So that's the mentor. A sponsor is somebody senior. It is somebody who does have power and a voice in the company who can advocate for you. And I say to people, your first sponsor, look up who is your director, who is your exec board person, because they are the person who knows you best and who knows your work. If you go for a sponsor somewhere else completely, they have to get to know you, right? And if you're trying to move around in your organisation, what you want is, I want my director sitting in a room with some other directors saying, Tamara's brilliant, she's looking for her next role. Oh, I heard that you've got something. Well, she's great, why don't you? And off you go. And I've had people do that for me at Sky, right? I've had people make introductions for me and say, Tamara's great, off you go, have a chat. And it opens doors. So they're the ones who are going to open the doors.
Good, thank you. And obviously talking about the successes, what's been some of the challenges, and particularly, have there been cultural challenges? Because for me, I think one of the biggest challenges that we face in this is the attitudinal, cultural and behavioural changes, which take a long time to shift.
Yeah, and sorry, I didn't address your previous point about the men. So there are rumblings from guys, of course there are, and there are also rumblings from women who maybe aren't on the Women into Leadership programme, or we have great programmes under our tech space, but they don't want to go into tech, or they don't want to be an engineer in home service. So first of all, we offer LinkedIn Learning to all of our employees, and we encourage everybody to make the most of that. And we encourage people to make time for personal development. We encourage everybody to reach out and get their own mentors. So that's how we address that. And with the guys who are like, well, I'm a guy, there's nothing for me, LinkedIn Learning Mentor Sponsors is for everybody. But additionally, we are trying to level the playing field here, right? We're not trying to be more than equal. And I'm always very clear, this is about finding balance. So we are addressing years, decades, and decades of sort of societal advantage towards men. So it's a tough time to be a guy. It's a tough time to be, a middle-class, middle-aged white guy. And I'm not going to say sorry, because it's been tough for us for a long time, much longer than that. So we're just trying to level the playing field, and that's how we do that. And then you saw in our video with regards to inclusion, for us culturally, it's really, really important that everybody feels included. And there's a difference between diversity and inclusive. You can have a diverse workforce when nobody feels inclusive and themselves. So for us, it does absolutely start at the cultural piece, we have 5 employee networks, multicultural, parents, women, LGBT and body and mind, and they all came from the ground up. They all came from the employees saying they wanted this network, and they all do brilliant events. They've all got really senior sponsors. They've all got budget. So we celebrate loads of different festivals. We have loads of colour in the space. They all do role model breakfasts. Our women at Sky do development sessions for everybody. So there's always lots going on where you feel you can be a part of all of those networks, whether you are LGBT or a woman or, have a body and mind issue, but you can be part of it to show that you support and you're all in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. We've touched a bit about confidence, which I think is something that everyone suffers with, the lack of confidence, but there's lots of evidence to show that women do less so, and you've touched on it a bit. Yeah. I'm interested to know, and actually just here in the room, who, male or female, who's found themselves being held back through not feeling they're good enough or not applying for that or so on. Certainly, I know I have. So I think it's, and one of the things as part of our study that we did within WACL was we did the study with LinkedIn actually, and they told us that women on average have 11 less kind of skills or attributes that they put on their LinkedIn profile than men. So that's just probably, lack of confidence or lack of self-belief. So how has Sky addressed that challenge? You touched on it a little bit earlier, but have you got any particular learnings for us and for the women in the room?
Yeah, so I mean, so the programmes that we've done, providing mentors, making sure people do have mentors, making sure that people feel heard, encouraging really good conversations between line managers. So sometimes line managers don't know the conversations to have, or they don't know where they can find things, or policies, or how to address a need that somebody might have. So it's about everybody feeling they have a voice and the best way to get that out of them. And the culture piece, as I said already, is really important. We do encourage, so our Women at Sky development sessions, where we have like actionable takeouts, and we've had people like Helen Tupper, Vanessa Vallely come to speak with us. You know, and people have walked out of those feeling really inspired, and here's a way that I can change something. So really, you know, taking part in those things, talking to your line manager, having a good mentor, and making the most of whatever is available in whatever development format, I would say are the key points.
Thank you. I'm going to throw it open to the audience. I'm just checking time to see, has anyone got, I've got 5 minutes. Thank you, Sabrina. Any particular questions? Ali?
So you're saying there's obviously a lot of rumblings with men, and we have it here in Dentsu as well. And last year there was a big focus, especially around the gender pay gap report, of getting that balance right. What's Sky's position, or even just your thinking on getting that right? Not putting a woman at the top because she's a woman, putting her there because she can do the exact same role that man can.
Yeah. So with Sky, we want the best, and we want the best person for the job. So the best person is always going to get the job, but if you do not have the best person, if you do not have a shortlist that has a 50-50 gender balance, or diverse and gender balance, you're not getting the best people in the first place, right? You've got to advertise properly, you've got to think about the language you're using, you've got to talk about flexible working, you've got to have 50-50 shortlists. You've then also got to have an interview panel that is balanced as well, because to attract the best talent, you've got to find people. And one of the reasons that, you know, we're sort of plateauing is we've got great leaders, right? We're not going to move them, but what we're saying is when you've got an opportunity to reshape your team, really look at who's in your team, right? You don't need another Bob, sorry Bobs, you know, but it's not, you know, you can't keep saying, oh, that person was great, I really got on with them, they think exactly like I do. Oh, well, that's great, so we're just going to keep doing the same things. So it's never about replacing people, it's never about putting a woman in just because, but make sure that they're getting the taps on the shoulder. That's also what sponsorship is about, right? There's nothing wrong, right? Advertise every job, but there's nothing wrong with saying, Pippa, this is the one for you, go for it, right? You can have preferred candidates, but make sure you're measuring them against other people as well. We have found that when we have pushed our recruiters, when we have gone harder to get a gender-balanced shortlist, we have skewed towards hiring the female because we've really, really gone out to find them, and you've got them in. You can't miss out 50% of the talent in the country.
Thank you. Another question.
Just wondering, it sounds like it's all quite a positive thing, and you've had a lot of senior buy-in, but
Yeah.
have you had any sort of much sort of resistance from any senior females? Because I know you've sort of got rumblings from males, but is it all positive from senior females as well? Is that supportive?
Yeah, definitely yes. And I'm going to quote Debbie, who at the event on Tuesday, we had a great event on Tuesday, said there's a special place in hell for women who pull up the ladder behind them. And I firmly believe that, right? It's on all of us to pay it forward. And being in a gender-balanced world, it's up to men and women to pay it forward. But, you know, we're working really hard to get to that gender balance, which is the right thing to do, and it's on us.
Brilliant. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, I've got one quickly. We've only got a minute left. So one of the panels earlier has talked about decoding the definition of modern femininity. And one of the things we're noticing within WACL is the changing choices that women are making, as you touched on, whether they're dropping out or female entrepreneurship, which we see in the Female Foundry. Are you seeing that change? And if you are, how are you addressing it?
So I'm seeing it for everyone, and I think that's the right thing. So flexible working, shared paternity leave. At Sky, we increased our paternity pay for men at the beginning, so it's 2 weeks normally. We increased it to 6 weeks paid plus 6 weeks unpaid that can be taken at any time. So creating that really flexible and family-friendly culture. It takes time. That's probably where there's a bit more resistance from some areas. It's like, oh, we can't work flexibly. It's like, really? You know, in today's world, in today's technology, just don't buy that. And I think that's where we're seeing it. And I think also, to quote our CCO, Lisa McGowan, she once said in a talk that she gave, you know, 80% is good enough. and you can't give 100% everywhere all the time, like you'll burn out. And I think more women are able to kind of go, that's okay, you know, do I need to gold polish that presentation until midnight? No, that's pretty good, and that's got everything in it that we need to. So I think that kind of taking that break of trying to be that super women mum and everything that maybe a decade or so ago we were doing, and moving into this more flexible, I'm going to work smartly so I have balance in my life, I think is going to be a benefit for everybody, and allow that gender balance to come in.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much again on
Thank you
behalf
for
of
having me.
Dentsu. It's
Thank
been
you.
a really interesting chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.